Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to properly plant a shrub. Now some of the things we're going to talk about will translate to bigger things like trees, bigger shrubs than this, smaller shrubs like this, but just some basics on how to plant a shrub. And today we're going to plant this Osmanthus right here. We've prepped the site. In this case we made the choice to use a herbicide to spray this grass out, and other methods you might want to use are using a plastic to smother the grass out, or you could manually remove the grass and everything would work out. So a couple things that we think about as we choose our site of where we're going to plant this shrub. First, looking for overhead utilities, looking for things that might get in the way, in particular with utilities, so there's none overhead. Another thing that we did was we went and we called ahead to our local municipality to have any underground utilities marked. And so we've done that, and this area has been marked as all clear. So our next step is to prepare the planting site further. So I'm here with the area that we want to plant, and you can see that we actually have marked out a quite large area to plant this plant. And if you can give a shrub a large area to spread out with loose soil, I think you're going to be more successful. One of the first things we'll do is we're just going to skim the top of the grass, the old grass off the top of this, and set that aside. Okay, and as you see me do this, you might think, man, you are being pretty vigorous with cutting those roots off the side of the tree. But this plant, when well watered, will rebound from this quite a bit and quite easily. You might set it back just a little bit, but in the long run, you're going to really save this plant from some problems and allow it to spread its roots out. So what I'm doing now at the end here is I'm just making some slits here on the top of the plant to make sure that we don't have any root curl that goes way to the back of this plant. I've taken off the bottom and all of the sides, and you can see we've got a fairly small root ball that's left on this plant, just about 10 inches, and so we're not going to excavate any deeper than 10 inches. We want to make sure that this has a stable base to set on, and we'll be good to go from there. Okay, so we don't have to excavate very much here. We're just taking a very little bit of this out. We've loosened this soil up. We're kind of spreading it out, and really, we're going to check this, but we're almost deep enough right here. Okay, so we have just excavated out just about 10 inches. One good thing that I often do to check is I take my shovel and I just kind of mark how big that root ball is, how deep it is. And then I put it up here, I take a look at it. Sometimes I'll put another shovel across like this, and I'll just check the depth. And here we've got a pretty good depth. We've kind of loosened this soil. I'll take a little kind of pack down the bottom of this because the roots are going to spread up majority of this way. It's not going to be going straight down in this shrub. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place this in the hole. You know, I always really aim to have shrubs and trees slightly above the grade. That tends to work out a lot better to make sure that we're not planting things too deeply. More trees and shrubs that are planted are killed because they're planted too deeply ever than they are planted too shallowly. So we're going to make sure that we plant this just a little bit high. We're going to mound dirt slightly up to it, and then we'll be done planting this tree here pretty soon. So we've got this in the hole now, and the next thing we want to do is we're just going to step back from it. We're going to look at it. We're going to see that if it's straight in the hole, and now is the time to make some adjustments. And I notice that I'm just leaning back just a little bit here, and so I'm going to make some adjustments, and I'm also going to kind of adjust the soil around the shrub that I've planted. Now, I'm not going to stomp firmly on this soil and pack it down, but I am going to take my hand and I'm going to kind of pat it down, and I'm going to push it down, and I might take my shovel, and I might even take this a little bit and take the end of my shovel and just kind of poke down a little bit around this to firm that soil up around it. Again, I'm not taking my foot and stomping it down there. I'm smoothing out the dirt. And then the last thing that we want to do right now, we got 2 more things to do, but one thing we want to do is water this in well. And what I've done is I've got this hose just on a very little bit of a trickle. I'm going to do something called mudding it in. I'm not going to be up here doing this with this tree or this shrub, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go near the base of this tree where I've loosened the soil. I'm actually going to shove this hose down into the soil, and I'm going to allow that whole cavity to completely fill up with water. And once that happens, when the water drains out, it will actually remove air pockets from the soil, which is something that you want to do. And so this process may take a while depending on the size of your hole, but that's what we want to do. We want to mud this little shrub in to make sure it gets off to a great start. Okay, so we have now mudded this little shrub in. It's well watered. The next thing I'm going to do is make any final adjustments to the level of the soil. Now, because of the water, we've let this sit and it's drained down a little bit, and we've exposed a little bit of the edges of the root ball on the side of this shrub. And so I'm going to make some final adjustments by putting just a little bit more soil up against the edges of the root ball. Not putting soil up against the trunk of this small shrub, but right up on the edges of the root ball to make sure that it has actual soil to grow in. If I were to just put mulch on some of these exposed areas, that mulch would have a tendency to just wick out that soil moisture. And so I want to make sure that I actually have soil up against the edges of this root ball. Okay, the last thing we're going to do here is add a layer of mulch, and we're going to add just 2 to 3 inches of mulch around this shrub. Why do you add mulch? Well, one, it's aesthetically pleasing. It looks nice. One reason is it retains moisture for this shrub, and then the other reason, it reduces competition by keeping weeds down. And so we're going to just create a nice little ring of mulch that's quite large for this shrub, sticking out several feet from the edges of this shrub to make sure that it has enough room to really get established well. And another thing for us here on campus is it's really beneficial to the people who maintain this turf grass, where they don't have to get up super close to this tree. The tree's safe, the people who are mowing stay away from it, and it ends up being a really good solution. Okay, so now we've basically got this planted. The last thing I'm going to do is just go right up the edge of the trunk on the bark of this, the trunk or the bark of this small shrub, and I'm going to make sure that there's not mulch right up against it. And I'm going to kind of brush that away right around, just about 1 inch away from the trunk of this tree. The root ball is covered, the ground is covered. We got a good area for this plant to spread out, and hopefully you can enjoy this shrub for years to come.